Good afternoon. It is 3:33, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the workshop to discuss updates to the Board Operating Procedures Handbook. Are you leading this, or am I guess I'm leading this. So before us, what you have is the document that says Conduct Board Committee Meetings. This is the feedback that was sent to Esperanza by the trustees. So this is kind of where we stand following our meeting back in May, I think it was. The other thing that we have is the current version of the board operating procedures. Liz, it's my understanding that this is the one that's currently adopted, correct? And then what you have is the other board operating that's in draft form. Pending our last conversation, I'll bring you guys back up, is we just talked about if you had any feedback or comments or things that you want added, we would send it and they would kind of compile it all together. We could have that conversation. Is there anything that anyone would like to see added to the current draft? I asked because what I would recommend, so that we're not making a willy-nilly conversation or decision on our board operating procedures, is that we put a two-person ad hoc together over the break in July to kind of finally just compile it, clean up the language how we want it, add any additions that we want, and then take formal action in August meeting when we come back from break to ratify and adopt our board operating procedures, just so that it's a very clean document. I know that Ms. Carrasco was talking about having to reconcile the document with board operating procedures as well, making sure that it aligns with the things that we adopted as a school district. Trustee Hernandez?
The board operating procedures that we have right now, I like the way Ms. Orozco did what she did on what she was proposing. If we could just make the headings like like we had in the past, and just put them onto this one. Other than that, I was okay with everything in it.
Any other comment by trustees? So I will say Ms. Collins did send us an email. I don't know if you guys had a chance to review it, which was, I believe it was conflict resolution. Is that correct? With Austin ISD, San Antonio ISD, Fort Worth ISD, and others. I know that's something that we don't have that I think it would be good to add into here. And then,
Actually, President Arabali, I sent that to Ms. Saavedra and yourself. I didn't copy all the other trustees.
my apologies.
I apologize.
So something that Ms. Collins sent for review was these portions. Ms. Saavedra, if you can share that with the document with the board. I think it's something that's just a good practice to have in our board operating procedures. There's some they're pretty standard. They're pretty much copy and pasted from each other. There's some with more detail. And then the other thing,
let me address.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so what I can do, instead of embedding it into the bigger, I will send you in the board update this week just that portion so that you all can review it and determine whether that's something that we should add aside from what's already in the newly proposed operating procedures, because that piece is currently not embedded in the larger document.
And then after we get that, then we adopt it.
In August.
in August, yes, ma'am. So what I'm recommending, if you guys are interested, and I happily volunteer because I know it's going to be some work, if by the end of this month you guys can send any additions or changes that you would like to see in the board operating procedures, I will compile that with the other member of the ad hoc committee. We'll get it to staff to send out to the board. As soon as that's done, then we will clean up the grammar. We'll clean up the document as the headings go, how everything else would flow, and then provide district staff time until our August board meeting to review it, make sure it's in compliance with our board operating procedure, our policies, as well as Texas Education Code. And then unless there's something glaring in the face, we would have a finalized document included in the board packet in August for the board to adopt, ratify, and start implementing.
In regards to the work of the board, preparing board meeting agenda, are we going to have that items number 2 and 3 there then? Or do we talk about that on page 7?
It was my understanding by the board that we no longer needed that workshop the week prior, that it was because we would adopt committees and we have the one-on-ones with the superintendent as well as our Friday recaps that would not be necessary. That was my takeaway from the last meeting with Esperanza, but I could be mistaking this.
I think that, are you
Number 2.
referencing number 2 or number 3?
if we had a number 2, I don't think we need a number 3, but I wasn't sure if we were going to have 1 week prior to our regularly board meeting or workshop.
Does anyone have feedback? This is the workshop that would happen 1 week prior to a regular scheduled board meeting to go through the entire agenda, giving us time. I know that was something that we talked about when we first got elected, but is that something a direction we still want to proceed in? It's item 7 on this document. No, no, no. This one, item 7, number 2. I know that the board did ask that we respect how busy everyone is and try to limit those meetings to just really important, helpful meetings. So if everyone's fine, then we would just take that out. Okay.
So then we just go with 3.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so is that meeting set, is it a standing meeting, or is it fluctuate, or?
So the thing I will say here, Ms. Saavedra and I's meetings are set as one-on-ones, and we talk about the agenda review. It's not even an agenda review, agenda setting. So the thing I do want to point out, it says may attend, and I think that we need to do it at the invitation of the board president. So that's not a standing meeting where that can happen.
Well, I asked to be in that meeting in June, and I wasn't, so I'd like to be part of those meetings. If Val can't come, then I'd like to go.
And so I just want to clarify that that's absolutely fine. When I meet with the board president one-on-one, it's an ongoing review over time until we solidify the agenda. So it's not just one meeting that we dedicate to solidifying the board agenda. So I meet with him every Friday. So every Friday from the end of one board meeting to the release of the next, every time we meet, whatever's been put on there by staff, I just review with him and say, this is going to be part of the next agenda. And so it's an organic process leading up to finalizing the board agenda. And so while I welcome, and it's the board president's decision, I just need you to understand that that's what it is. It's not one meeting where we sit. Now, if you'd like to be part of a meeting where the board agenda is actually close to being solidified, then that may be, an opportune time for you to join that conversation.
I would truly like to be part of that because of the fact that it does take that much time to review the agendas, and that would take away from not having to meet with your assistant every time I have questions.
But
there-
when we
yeah.
review the agenda, it's not with backup. We're just reviewing the actual items that are on the agenda, but it doesn't always include backup or executive summary information. It's really this piece of the agenda that we're setting. So do you see this agenda right here? So this is the document that we look at, but it's not an extensive review of each item, going through executive summary or going through backup for each one.
Again, I had asked to be part of this agenda review for June, and I wasn't part of it. I'd like the opportunity to be part of every meeting then, for every board meeting that we're going to have.
Okay.
And if not me, then maybe our vice president. Thank
So,
you.
President Irabali,
Yes, ma'am.
if I could just interject for a moment, because one of the things that we need to be very cognizant of is the Open Meetings Act and how many trustees we have talking about district business before we actually get to a board meeting, and making sure that we're not creating a situation where we have trustees subjecting themselves to like a walking quorum, whether it be intentional or not. So I would be very mindful of that. Right now, the current policy that we have, which is BE local, reads that the president and the superintendent shall prepare the agenda for the board meetings. There isn't any other inclusion of any other trustee or officer in that. If you'll recall, when we went through the TASB policy review and we were looking at modifying updating policies. We do it every 5 to 7 years. This is one of the policies that came up, and TASB, Mr. Narcisse, Eric Narcisse from TASB, was pretty, I would say, strong or adamant about the fact that you need to be very careful about the number of trustees that are getting together to talk about the agenda before you have a meeting. And so with that in mind, I would just like for you to consider that.
Between the president, the vice president, and secretary, that's only 3. We're not violating any open meetings.
It just takes one more to make a walking quorum.
Right, but it doesn't say any other.
Correct, but
Trustees.
that would limit any of our abilities to talk to any other trustees about any item that was set on the agenda and try to make any decisions or work or collaborate with our other trustees, because every agenda, us 3 would be in a meeting.
Okay, well, then I would like consideration to be part of that meeting, then.
Okay, and again, as Ms. Collins said, and as it says May, so it's at the invitation of the board president. So we'll definitely take that into consideration as we go forward. Mhm. Are there any other trustees that have any more comments? No, any page, anything.
So one concern I had was there was nothing about academics on the committee structure, if that's the direction that we are going, and there's going to be some sort of permanency to this. I kind of preferred the finance/operations rather than budget/finance also, because I felt that was a little bit more inclusive. Finance/operations. And then a 4th for academics. The other thing is that we're sort of changing it so that the committee has to include less than a quorum of board members. I think that's new, right? Because in the past, we've had committee structure where it was sort of open to any board member, and they were posted. So I think posting it helps if other board members want to attend. So I think that's a change that I'd like to talk through.
So this is just feedback from all the trustees compiled into one document. No decision's been reached, so I would defer to the rest of the board if that's the direction. Do we want to do it where it's 2 or less trustees, that way that they, kind of the small working groups? Are we looking at the 2 to 3 trustees we post every time, have the formal meeting up on the...
Well, and I don't like that. I still think we
Oh,
can
you
have...
want working?
I still think we can have working groups, but I would rather have inclusive working groups, especially because our schedules are also crazy. That would allow other trustees to join in, or, whatever. I mean, you can see even sometimes with audit committee how it's hard to get people here all the time.
Yep.
So having it open, I think, helps with attendance, helps with the working piece of it. I certainly prefer the working group as opposed to, and the best example that I can give is like kind of how budget is given. Maybe even less presentation, just more working, but yeah.
So just really continue to post so that there's an availability beyond 2 to be part of the
So you
conversation.
can have 2 people that head it and still have the
Right.
same committee responsibilities, but my recommendation would be posting so that anybody can come, still maintaining the workshop type format.
Right.
And then again, the other recommendation, I know that's something that Daniel and I had talked about, is having an academic committee. I think right now that would be very important, so I'd like to have that as maybe a 4th.
Okay, trustee Call.
What I'd recommend is that we keep the language about the composition of each committee as is, but just include a caveat saying that if more trustees want to attend, they should let, the board president know, say a week in advance, so that they can post it. But I don't think it's necessary to post everything. I think that's a lot of administrative work. That's not necessary. But occasionally there may be a committee meeting that more than 2 trustees want to attend, and then we can just post it.
Well, you could always post it with no backup, but, I mean, so, right. I mean, we typically provide some form of backup, but we can post it and just say it's a committee meeting, and very generic. And that doesn't require a whole lot of, but there would be no backup. Guaranteed backup anyways, I would say, no
I almost-
guaranteed backup.
I almost like that, just because then it's not us having to worry about sending the email in advance and then them worrying about having to post specific ones. It's just like, becomes part of the process to generically post them, and then whoever shows up, shows up. I think that, to me, that sounds easier, but I could be wrong. That's why I'm asking.
It doesn't matter to me. I just want to make it as simple and efficient as possible.
When it is posted, does it have to be live stream and minutes and the whole 9 yards, or can it just, or do not? If someone has that answer.
If you had a decision whether to post or not to post, I would post, because in the past, what we've had being problems when we haven't post committee meetings is, what if you have, a quorum of trustees show up, and then you have more of a quorum of the trustees show up, and then if you're not posted, who are you going to turn away? And that could become an internal fight between the trustees and the team of 8, and I just don't think that's a good position to put yourselves in.
But in our case, I haven't seen that happen. And in fact, if Ms. Hanani and I hadn't been at the ad hoc, and it was the ad hoc committee, had we not come, I would encourage others to come so they'd learn just as much as we did. But it was just us two. I've been to audit meetings, and Israel, if you weren't there, I would have been the only one there. So the budget meetings are already something of so important, we would all want to be there. But then there's other times, I would want to go to any of these others, but are you going to, at that time, that's when it becomes an issue. But these last 4 years or 3 years that I've been here, I don't ever think we've had more than 4 of us here.
Yeah. So I think it's just better to post. We all agree on that? Okay, perfect. Is there any other items that should be taken into consideration that you guys see? Yes. Yeah. Okay. If no one's dying to compile the information and write up this document, I happily volunteer. And then if someone else wants to help out, that would be fantastic. Is there anyone that would like to volunteer and join in?
I'll volunteer.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. Okay. We're going to compile the document and get some clean version out, and just so that every trustee has it. The only thing I'm going to say is we are tight on this because we want to have it done for August. So what I'm going to propose here is that by June 27th, which is next Thursday, remember the district's now closed on Fridays. They're working 10 days. If you can review this document, if there's anything that's missing, any additions that you want, that's the absolute deadline that we can have. Because after that, that's when I will go through with Daniel and we'll compile, rewrite, and draft it the way it needs to. After that, we will hand it off to the administration, where administration will have time to check that it's in compliance with our board policies and Texas Education Code. And then from there, we will be able to send it back out to the trustees for review and adoption in our August board meeting, which is the 3rd Tuesday of the month. I don't know what day that is. We okay with this?
And just to be clear, this didn't change from the last.
No, not since the ad hoc, correct. Yes. All right. I don't need a motion because it's a workshop. So if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close this meeting out at 3:52. Thank you, everyone.